Hello and welcome to this webinar on cybersecurity, choosing the best protection for your small business. So this is a webinar that is aimed, even though it says it's small businesses, small business being anything up to a kind of 1,000 people really, but in this instance, literally small being a couple, 5, 10, 20 employees is really what we're mainly going to be talking about. But the cybersecurity doesn't vary too differently depending on the size of your business. So hopefully you will get some value from this. Also, I will be doing a question and answers session at the end. So please do put your messages in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. So this is all around the cybersecurity threats that could happen to a small business. So what things do you need to put in place to stop those threats? We're not going to be talking about all the different types of threats, but it's more about how can you set up your systems and everything. So it's, as I say, it's titled Small Businesses, but it's really the main difference as businesses get bigger is that they have more things like asset registers. They'll be recording more things like team training and compliance and those kind of things. But in terms of cybercrime, it's on its way up. And knowing what and how to protect can be an absolute minefield. So hopefully we're going to break down some of the myths around this. So, but a quick disclosure is that cybersecurity is constantly evolving, the same with technology. So your cybersecurity needs to be regularly reviewed and it needs to evolve with you to make sure that it gets the most from your business, but also with the world of technology and hackers and threats and everything else that is constantly moving. So what we always do when it comes to cybersecurity is we break it down into 3 areas so that it's much easier to understand. So the first area is the business as a whole. Second area is how do we protect the actual device? So the laptop, the desktop, the phone, whatever it is that the individual's using. And then it's actually the final part is how do we protect the user as much as possible? So first of all, when we talk about the business, this is the protection of the company as its whole. So what software globally does your business use? What data does it use? Where is all the data stored? And then it's really understanding, first of all, how do all of your people use that software? So who can access it? What management have you got over the data? How is it all set up? So you've got that side of things, but then the physical side, which is the backups. So what happens if you lose data? What happens if you're hacked and you can no longer get that data? Do you have it stored somewhere else? So the first element is always looking at who can access your data across whichever software platforms you use, and also if the worst happens, fire, flood, theft, etc., what backups have you got in place? And is it multi-layer backup? So not just one backup, you want to have 2. So a backup might be for hardware failure, but then you've also got a separate cloud backup in case that hardware gets stolen. So there's lots of different types of backups, but that's where we would start first of all. Then the second is the device. So these are your main devices. So and the key is it's around having automated protection on your devices. So you don't want to have any manual processes where people need to remember to do things. It's all about making sure that it's automated. So you can have, again, we spoke about backups. You can have backups of the individual devices, depending on how you've got your data and depending on what software you're using. But generally, we would say go with a global data store. So, you know, whether you're using SharePoint or Google Drive, or maybe you've got a main server that's based at your location. It's all about making sure that people have to store everything there. Then we do multiple backups of that one location, but you can do it in multiple places. Then the other element is how do we protect the actual device? So this is whether we do a software firewall on that device, or whether we go with antivirus and maybe an endpoint detection and response. Now, I don't want to make this too much of a techie session, but essentially the main difference of how bigger companies work compared to maybe smaller businesses is that it's all about having fully managed security software rather than essentially non-managed, which means the user chooses. So an example would be if you've got managed updates on whether it's your Microsoft Windows, whether it's Microsoft 365, whether it's your antivirus. If they're managed, it means that they happen. And you as the business control and make sure that they're done every week, every day, every quarter, whatever it is, depending on the software, but generally every week. And you make sure that it happens and it happens out of hours so it doesn't disturb the usage of that machine. Whereas if you're not managing it, you get those annoying pop-ups. Do you want to update your software? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And what generally happens is the user is right in the middle of something and they click no. If they're in control of it, often they won't update it as often as it should be updated. The other thing then is if they do the update and it then needs to do a restart cycle and everything else, you could lose them for half an hour, hour and a half. Then if it doesn't start properly because of X, Y, and Z. So it's all about the difference of having a managed protection or just having it off the shelf. That's the big difference. So, and then, but it really is about you as the company decide, not the individual user. And then the final part is thinking about how do you protect the user? Now, this is things like an anti-spam product so that the user will get less spam, but also more protection against spam. You might want to look at how can you train your team so that they do know what's bad, what they shouldn't click on, what is a bogus email. So again, regular training is key. Generally monthly is fine. Some companies opt for every 2 weeks. But it's around educating your team. Give them the education so that they know how to spot and how to protect your company's data. Then the final element is that really is around the passwords and password management. Now, this you can do individually, but it really isn't recommended. You're much better off to look at some kind of password management platform so that then you centrally run the passwords. There's a really big difference between you as the company controlling and owning the passwords or the individual owning their passwords. If they set the password up and they save it in their own personal password keeper, something like Google, then you could struggle if they were to leave, or let's say abruptly, I don't know, they had a medical issue and they couldn't work for a number of months. You as a business might be affected if you can't gain access to certain things. So it's all about making sure that you've got really good password management. But yeah, essentially, we would say there's the 3 different areas. Let's look at your business as a whole, which isn't necessarily device driven. Then you've got the physical devices that everyone's using. So as I say, whether it's laptops, Macs, desktops, mobile phones, tablets, whatever it is, how can we protect them, but also make sure that they are all up to date without you having to worry about it? And then the final element is protecting the user and training the user so that they've got that knowledge not to do anything really, really stupid. So they're your 3 areas. Finally, we'd always say as a good baseline recommendation, think about having cyber essentials. The cyber essential standard, which essentially is where you would go through and do a checklist, or you or your IT provider would go through and do that. Whereas Cyber Essentials Plus is when a third party actually would do the tests and everything and make sure that all of your systems and practices are within scope, and then the tests as you go along. And this especially is whether it's Cyber Essentials or maybe you're ISO accredited and it's something like ISO 27001 is the kind of the IT cyber related one. So, but then finally, we would really recommend look at partnering with the right IT support company. Now, if you are a smaller business, you probably don't need IT support. So it's not about IT support. It's about having someone managing your devices. And Syn Star can help with this if you just want device only management. The thing is, if you've got someone internally doing it and they're also doing something else, it could be a really inefficient use of your time or their time trying to learn and keep up with IT. Whereas if you've just got fully managed platforms, then you know that all of your devices are always kept up to date. And that is the key. Because if you've got that, then you can focus on running and growing your business or your department. So it's really, really important. So that's the end of the webinar as is. As I say, here's my contact details. I've got quite a few questions actually that I've seen coming throughout the webinar. So we'll go through those in a minute, but do look at connecting with me. Search up Giles Cleverly on LinkedIn, or there's my email address if you did want to email me any questions. Again, Syn Star, we're on all of the major social media channels. So that'll be a really good thing to connect with. And let's look at some questions. So here we go. How long does it take? Well, I'm assuming to effectively get you all up to date and all of your devices managed and stuff. It can be really, really quick. Syn Star, if you were to do it with Syn Star, we have invested in the best automation platform, which means we can click a button and roll out all of these updates in mass to all of your devices. Again, you just have to install a small bit of software and away you go. So, and you get all the fully alert monitoring and everything with that. So it is really quick, really simple, really easy. We have a couple of virtual people. Can you cover them? So yes is the answer. The way that our tools work is as long as the device is on the internet, then we can fully manage it, make sure it's all secure and do all the updates and the patches. There is a slight caveat with that, is that you need to make sure that the device is business owned for us to be able to do everything with it. Whereas if you're using virtual people and it's their personal devices, then you just need to be a little bit careful, because if they're going to be using it for, say, other business use or personal use, then you may come into an issue where they don't necessarily want you to manage and monitor their device. So yeah, do just ask the question. But certainly if it's a business owned device and you're shipping them to your virtual people, then that's absolutely fine. And we can asset tag all of the devices as well. So that'll be fine. What if things change? Okay, so in terms of changes, we assume that you're talking about types of viruses and types of attack. The whole thing is with partnering with an IT company is that they've got their finger on the pulse. They fully know what's going on, and in which case they'll keep you up to date. In theory, not all IT companies are the same. Some just get their head down and just do break fix. Others are much more kind of proactive, where we'll just make sure that everything's up to date. So we use Microsoft for all of our security. Why do we need anything else? Great question. So we often get asked that, especially when it comes to things like Microsoft. If you're using Microsoft 365 and using their backup. Now, this is, for want of a better word, terrible from a cybersecurity perspective. The reason is that we need to protect you from all of the bad things and the nasty people out there. Now, if Microsoft get hacked majorly, guess what? That will include your main data and also the backups. So you're always better off to spread the risk somewhat. So you having Microsoft updates on the main platform and any Microsoft software that you use, yes, definitely very important. But you should always look at having some different type of antivirus or protection, and definitely look at having some kind of different separated backup so that all your eggs aren't in one basket. It's really, really important. Not saying that a lot of the Microsoft security products aren't good, but just from a security perspective, you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. So we're a small team of architects, only 2 PC users. The rest use Macs. Do you need this for Macs? The short answer is yes. Certainly, again, the game of cat and mouse never ends, whether it's with a PC or a Mac. Cat and mouse being that the hackers are always looking for vulnerabilities, holes in those devices and that software. And you get holes in Macs exactly the same as PCs. So yes, definitely having fully managed security software on any device that's online is always recommended. But again, it depends what your security tolerance is. How risk averse are you? You know, we're talking such a small monthly amount that generally we would say, yes, you know, all of your devices should be protected. The number one rule with cybersecurity is, well, apart from don't put all your eggs in one basket, is it's only as good as its weakest link. So if you've got machines out there that aren't protected, then, you know, they could cause an issue for the rest of your devices. So next question, do all my computers need this if I have part-time staff? Yes, basically. The whole thing is if you've only got part-time members of staff and they've got you know, a dirty laptop, for want of a better word, where it's got viruses or Trojans or something horrible in there, they're still logging into your data, whether it's once a week or once a month. So the security risk is still extremely high. So as previously said, all your devices is the best way. What antivirus do you recommend? So there's different types of antivirus. What Syn Star uses is business grade managed antivirus. So it means that we monitor and manage it, and it means we also have complete control to push out all the updates. So we don't wait for the user to say yes please, and we do all of our updates generally out of working hours. So we'll upload the patches and we'll push them out generally outside of working hours, depending on if you're a 24-hour operation. But yeah, we use a fully managed one. Can Syn Star review this? I mean, in terms of the review, yes, certainly Syn Star can review whatever antivirus you're using. We can, we can offer advice and guidance, and we can offer some or all of security software that you may need. So how do I know if the protection is managed? Generally, if you bought it off the shelf as a one-off price or an annual price, then it's probably not managed. Do you get the annoying pop-ups that ask you if you want to do it? That's usually a big sign. And if you can then click no, you don't want to, and it disappears and does nothing, then it's not managed. It's being self-managed by the user, not the business. Really, really important that you guys understand that. So what if I buy annually? Can it be moved midterm? Depending on what it is you've bought annually, again, we don't need to have every element protected. Under one suite, it can be multiple protections. So it really depends. Again, feel free to drop me a message. We can have a chat and find out more. And a final question, unless anyone pops another one in, is how easy is it to get Cyber Essentials? Well, how long's a piece of string? It's really easy if you're currently doing everything correct. Cyber Essentials is a checklist, so it's around 80 questions. We have actually done a previous webinar on that, so you can check out our webinar in the syn-star.co.uk/learning centre. So if you go in there, you can actually see a much more detailed approach to Cyber Essentials and all of the different questions. But how easy it is, it depends. If you're, again, fully managed and you've got a lot of the tools, it can be a pretty straightforward process. But generally, let's say it can take a couple of months. It might take a couple of weeks. It's really difficult to give an exact answer without knowing your exact setup. But again, do please reach out, get in contact. So that's the final question. There you go. So if you have got any questions, anything at all about cybersecurity, what you should and shouldn't be doing, just some advice, bounce some ideas off of, please do reach out. As I say, that's my email address. Find me on LinkedIn, so just Giles Cleverly, or as I say, look up Syn Star on all of the major social media platforms. So thank you very much for your time.